It was an unusually hot afternoon when Zane wiped the sweat off his brow and tightened the last bolt on an old engine. His workshop was nothing more than a wooden shed with rusted tools, but it was all he had. Just as he was preparing to close for the day, a sleek black car skidded to a stop right in front of his garage, steam rising from its hood like an angry ghost. Out stepped a woman who looked as if she didn't belong anywhere near a place like that, high heels, designer shades, and an attitude that screamed trouble. "Excuse me, can you help me?" she asked, frustration evident in her voice. Zane nodded, wiping his greasy hands on a rag as he approached. She introduced herself as Bella, barely looking at him as she checked her phone. The engine just stopped. "I have somewhere very important to be." Zane opened the hood and immediately spotted the issue, a snapped belt and leaking radiator. This was no quick fix, and her pristine expression crumbled when he told her. "I can try to patch it up temporarily, but it's not going to get you very far," he said. She rolled her eyes, muttering about how mechanics were all the same. Still, she had no choice. He got to work right away, and as he did, he noticed her tapping her foot impatiently, clearly uncomfortable in the dirty environment. Zane smiled to himself. Rich people were always in a hurry, but life had its own plans. Zane worked through the heat, sweat pouring down his face as Bella watched from the shade of her car door. She kept glancing at her watch, sighing loudly, but something about her impatience amused him. "If sighing could fix it, you'd be long gone by now," he joked without looking up. She smirked, clearly not used to people speaking to her that way. He finally managed a quick fix, enough to get her to the next town where a proper mechanic might have better parts. "Drive slow and don't turn off the engine," he warned, handing her a paper towel to clean her hands. She hesitated before taking it. "Thanks. I guess," she said, getting into her car without offering to pay. Zane simply nodded and waved as she sped off down the dusty road. But just as she disappeared around the corner, Zane noticed something on the ground. It was her phone, sleek, expensive, and glowing with unread messages. He picked it up and sighed. "Looks like I'll be seeing you again," he muttered, turning back toward his shed, unaware of how much this moment would change his entire life. The next day, just as Zane was reopening his workshop, Bella came storming in, her expression thunderous. "You had my phone," she barked. Zane blinked and pulled it from his toolbox. "You dropped it," he said calmly. "Could have called someone to come get it." She looked like she wanted to argue but didn't. She took the phone and paused, her gaze softening slightly. I couldn't call anyone. My contacts were all on this," she confessed, almost ashamed. Zane raised an eyebrow, surprised. Someone as wealthy as her had no one's number memorized? She looked at him, as if studying his face for the first time. "Thanks, Zane." Hearing her say his name felt strange, almost personal. He nodded, unsure of what else to say. Before she left, her eyes scanned the small workshop. "You're talented," she said slowly. "Why are you working in a place like this?" Zane shrugged. "Life," he said simply. Bella opened her mouth as if to say something, then closed it again. "Maybe I'll see you around," she said, stepping back into her car. He watched her drive off, but something about her expression lingered in his mind. 3 days later, Bella returned. This time, she wasn't in distress. She parked her car, stepped out, and smiled. "Thought I'd check if your magic hands could do more permanent repairs," she joked, holding up a new part she'd bought. Zane looked confused but accepted the part. "You actually came back?" he asked. Bella leaned against the wall. Yeah, figured I owed you at least that much. As Zane worked on her car again, Bella surprised him by sitting nearby and making small talk. She asked about his life, his work, and why he hadn't opened a bigger garage. Zane shrugged. No capital, no connections. I work, I eat, I sleep. She chuckled. Simple man. He glanced at her. Complicated woman. That made her laugh for real. The more they talked, the more the gap between them shrank. Bella wasn't as stuck up as she seemed. And Zane wasn't just a poor mechanic. He had dreams, hidden scars, and quiet pride. By the time he was done, she wasn't ready to leave. She lingered, staring at the car like it was suddenly uninteresting. Coffee? She asked. Zane blinked. You're asking me out? Don't ruin it, she smirked. Zane and Bella sat in a small roadside cafe, sipping cheap coffee under a plastic roof. Bella squirmed on the hard plastic chair, unaccustomed to the lack of luxury. Zane noticed. You can still leave, you know, he teased. Bella laughed. And miss the thrill of being in your world? Never. Her sarcasm was playful, but Zane could sense her curiosity. As they talked, Bella opened up more. She wasn't just rich, she was pressured. Her family expected perfection, her fiancé was more of a business partner, and her life was scripted. Zane listened without judgment, which surprised her. You don't say much, she said. I've learned you don't need to talk a lot to be heard, he replied, eyes fixed on hers. That night, as he walked her to her car, there was an awkward pause. She smiled at him, and something unspoken passed between them. Thanks for listening, she said softly. Any time, he replied. As her car drove away, Zane stood there a while longer, staring at the empty road, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Just as things seemed to be shifting between them, reality returned with a slap. A shiny black car pulled up outside Zane's workshop the next day, and out stepped a sharply dressed man with anger in his eyes. You Zane? He asked, approaching like a predator. Zane wiped his hands and nodded. Who's asking? The man scoffed. I'm Marco. Bella's fiancé. Marco wasted no time accusing Zane of chasing someone out of his league. Zane kept his cool, but the insult stung. Bella arrived minutes later, clearly furious at Marco. What are you doing here? She demanded. Marco glared at her. Protecting what's mine. Bella turned to Zane. I'm sorry, she whispered. But the damage was done, Marco had brought chaos. After the confrontation, Zane quietly went back to work, pretending nothing had happened. But inside, he felt foolish. He was a poor mechanic, and she was engaged to a man with power and wealth. What was he even thinking? Love, he reminded himself bitterly, didn't pay rent. After that heated visit from Marco, Bella didn't return for days. Zane went about his routine in silence, fixing engines and tuning brakes, but his mind wasn't in it. He replayed Marco's words over and over again. Chasing someone out of your league. Maybe he was right. Maybe Bella was just slumming for a thrill and would return to her shiny world without a second thought. But Bella was feeling torn too. She sat in her expensive home, ignoring Marco's texts and calls, her mind clouded with memories of Zane. He was everything Marco wasn't, genuine, kind, grounded. She didn't want to admit it out loud, but she missed him. Still, pride and confusion kept her from reaching out. Zane, on the other hand, had almost made peace with never seeing her again. Until one evening, just as the sun was melting into the horizon, she appeared again, no fancy clothes this time, just jeans and a hoodie. "You didn't think I'd let Marco scare me off, did you?" she asked. Zane didn't say anything. He just stepped aside, letting her walk back into his life. From that moment on, Bella became a regular face at the garage. She'd bring lunch, sit with Zane during his breaks, and sometimes just watch him work. They didn't talk much about Marco or the confrontation, they both avoided the subject. Instead, they focused on the present, slowly getting closer each day. Bella started asking questions about car engines, wanting to understand what Zane did. He'd laugh at her clumsy attempts, but deep down, it touched him. "I feel like I belong here more than I do in my own house," she confessed once. Zane looked at her and saw a woman desperately searching for peace. Their bond deepened, and though no one said it, something more than friendship was blooming. But the world around them wasn't blind. Whispers started. Customers gave Zane curious looks. And Bella's absence from high-profile events wasn't going unnoticed. Storm clouds were gathering. One evening, a stranger snapped a photo of Zane and Bella sitting on the back of an old truck, laughing together. It spread like wildfire online. Bella's name trended. Her family was furious, and Marco was livid. The post was captioned, "Heiress ditching billionaire fiancé for broke mechanic?" Chaos followed. Bella was summoned home by her father, who didn't even wait for her to speak. "You're embarrassing this family," he yelled. "You're throwing your future away for a grease monkey." Bella stood her ground. "He respects me." That's more than Marco ever did. But her words fell on deaf ears. She was grounded like a child, her phone taken, her car keys confiscated. Zane, meanwhile, was blindsided. He saw the post and the comments. People mocked him, called him a gold digger, a dreamer. He didn't know where Bella was or what was happening, and the silence killed him. The girl who made his heart beat differently had vanished, again. Weeks passed. Bella was locked away in her mansion, and Zane convinced himself it was over. He tried to move on, pouring himself into his work, but he'd flinch every time a black car drove by. He stopped checking social media, stopped waiting for miracles. Then one night, as he closed up the garage, he found a note slipped under the door. It was from Bella. Just 5 words, "I haven't given up yet." His hands trembled as he read it over and over again. She was still out there. Still fighting. The next morning, he put on a clean shirt and waited. No one came. Not that day, not the next. But the note gave him something he desperately needed, hope. He kept it folded in his pocket, close to his chest, like a silent promise. Bella couldn't take it anymore. One night, while her parents were asleep, she snuck out with nothing but a backpack and her heart on fire. She had no car, so she walked miles, avoiding attention, blending into the night. When she finally arrived at Zane's garage, it was nearly dawn. She knocked weakly, and when Zane opened the door and saw her, neither said a word. He just pulled her into his arms. She was tired, cold, and scared, but free. He made her tea, gave her his old hoodie, and let her sleep on the only cot he had in the back. When she woke up hours later, the garage was alive with the sound of work. She stepped out, yawning, and Zane grinned. "Back from the rich life already?" She chuckled. "I came back to where I feel safe." It was no fairy tale. But it was real. For the next few days, Bella stayed hidden. Zane helped her find small ways to blend in, teaching her how to live without luxury. They shopped at the local market, cooked cheap meals together, and watched old movies on his scratched-up laptop. It was strange, but oddly beautiful. But the world didn't forget her so easily. Her disappearance was all over the media, and Marco made it his mission to find her. He offered a reward to anyone with information. Zane grew paranoid, watching every customer, every phone call. Bella insisted she didn't care. "Let them come," she said. "I'm not going back." But Zane cared. He knew he couldn't protect her forever. He wasn't afraid for himself, but for her. And one night, as they lay under the stars, he finally asked, "Are you sure about this?" Bella looked at him, eyes unwavering. "I've never been more sure about anything." Just when things felt stable, betrayal crept in. Zane's childhood friend, Ray, saw Bella and couldn't resist the reward. Without telling Zane, he snapped a photo and sent it to Marco. Within hours, black SUVs were spotted near the garage. Zane sensed something was wrong. Ray arrived the next morning, acting normal, but Zane noticed him looking over his shoulder too much. "What did you do?" Zane asked. Ray froze. "I needed the money, man. I didn't think they'd act so fast." Zane's heart sank. He grabbed Bella's hand and ran. They barely escaped. Bella cried in the back of Zane's truck as they sped down unfamiliar roads. "I trusted you," she whispered, heartbroken. Zane didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the road. There was no going back now. They ended up in an abandoned house that Zane's uncle used to own. It was dusty, dark, but off the grid. There was no power, no water, just shelter. Zane worked for hours to make it livable. Bella helped, showing she wasn't just some helpless heiress. They settled in, using candlelight and old blankets. Zane taught Bella how to make fire, and she surprised him by learning quickly. "I'm not useless," she joked. He smiled. "You're full of surprises." They grew closer in that place, trapped, but together. One night, under flickering candlelight, they kissed. It wasn't perfect or fancy, but it was honest. Afterward, they sat in silence, just listening to the wind. "I want to build a life with you," Bella whispered. Zane held her hand tighter. "Then let's start here." One morning, Bella found a box hidden in the old house. Inside were old documents, pictures of Zane as a baby, and a birth certificate, one that didn't make sense. She stared at it, confused, and waited for Zane to wake up. When he saw it, he froze. "I didn't think anyone would find that," he said, voice low. Bella looked at him. "Zane, this says you were adopted." He nodded. "I've always known. But I never asked questions." Bella pulled out another paper, an old letter from his birth mother. It was addressed to someone powerful. Zane's hands shook. "This is the same last name as," Bella gasped. "Marco's family." The truth hit them hard. Zane wasn't just some mechanic. He was connected to the same elite circle Bella had escaped from. Everything suddenly changed. Zane sat in silence, holding the letter from his birth mother, the corners of the old paper trembling in his hands. The surname matched Marco's family exactly. Bella sat across from him, equally stunned. "If this is real, Zane, you're connected to one of the richest families in the country." But Zane wasn't excited. He was angry. Confused. He never wanted a connection to that world. He liked his life simple, his garage, his peace. But this changed everything. Why would they abandon me and keep Marco? He muttered. Bella hesitated. Maybe they didn't know. Or maybe they chose. That possibility stung the most. They decided to keep it between themselves, at least for now. Zane needed time to process. Bella needed time to understand what it all meant. They thought they could hide from the truth, but the truth was already digging its claws into their lives, ready to unravel everything. The search for Bella intensified. News outlets speculated wild theories, and Marco used his influence to pressure the authorities. But what no one expected was for Marco to get personally involved. He hired private investigators, combing through every place she might run to. Meanwhile, Bella and Zane tried to live as quietly as possible. Zane avoided calls from Ray, still furious over the betrayal. But one day, while gathering supplies in a nearby town, Zane noticed a man in a black cap tailing him. He lost him in the market, but fear crept in like a slow poison. That night, they packed what little they had and left again. Bella didn't complain. She knew being with Zane meant sacrificing comfort. As they drove through the night, Zane looked at her and whispered, "I don't know where this road ends, but I'm glad you're beside me." Bella smiled. "Wherever you go, I go." They found shelter in a quiet rural town, where nobody recognized them. Zane took odd jobs fixing tractors and generators to earn a little cash. Bella helped around, learning quickly, winning over the locals with her humility and charm. One day, a frail woman walked into the shed where Zane was fixing a broken tiller. She stared at him, stunned, tears welling in her eyes. "Zane?" she whispered. He turned, confused. "Do I know you?" She trembled. "I'm your mother. The one from the letter." He stood frozen, heart pounding. Bella, who had just arrived with water, nearly dropped the bottle. Zane took a step back, trying to process. The woman told them everything, how she had been forced to give him up, how powerful hands had erased his existence from the family tree. Bella held his hand the whole time. Zane's birth mother explained how she had been a servant in the household. When she got pregnant, the family sent her away in disgrace. Zane had been born in secrecy. She was paid to disappear, under threat of violence. Marco's family had buried it all. Zane couldn't breathe. His life had been a lie. And now, he wasn't just connected to Marco, he might even be the firstborn. The true heir. Bella sat beside him, her face a mix of shock and awe. "This changes everything," she whispered. Zane didn't respond. His mind was spinning. He needed time. He didn't want money, fame, or power. He just wanted peace. But peace wasn't coming anytime soon. His very blood had made him a target now. Marco wasn't just fighting for Bella anymore, he was fighting to keep Zane from rising. Marco was growing desperate. His investigators finally tracked Zane and Bella to the small town. When he saw the first picture of Zane fixing a tractor, something inside him snapped. "He's mocking me," Marco spat. "He thinks he can steal my fiancé and my legacy?" He launched a plan, one darker than anything before. Marco reached out to one of Zane's former employers and paid him to spread lies, that Zane had a criminal record, that he'd assaulted someone. Soon, rumors began to spread even to the town where they'd taken refuge. People looked at Zane differently. Clients canceled jobs. Even the local landlord warned them to move on. Zane knew it was Marco's doing. Bella begged him to fight back, but Zane only shook his head. "I don't need revenge," he said. "I just want to live." But Marco didn't want him to just live. One night, Zane and Bella returned from a walk to find their shelter in flames. The fire roared through the night sky, a monstrous inferno. Everything they owned, gone. Bella screamed. Zane pulled her back as the roof collapsed. Firefighters arrived too late. The police called it suspicious. Zane already knew who was behind it. He looked at the ashes, then at Bella, and something hardened in him. "I didn't ask for this fight," he said quietly, "but he wants one. So now, I'll give it to him." Bella nodded, silently supporting him. It wasn't just about love anymore. Marco had crossed a line. And Zane was done running. Zane and Bella returned to the city, but not as fugitives. They walked straight into the headquarters of Marco's family business. Security tried to stop them, but Zane demanded a meeting with the board. His proof? The letter, the birth certificate, and his mother, now standing tall beside him. Marco was summoned. He walked into the boardroom, smirking, until he saw Zane's mother. His smirk dropped. Zane laid out everything on the table, the truth of his origin, the bribes, the fire. Marco stood in silence as the room spun into chaos. "Looks like the mechanic isn't so poor after all," Zane said, locking eyes with him. Marco's voice shook. "You think they'll choose you over me?" Zane just smiled. "Let's see." The board demanded proof. A DNA test was arranged immediately. Zane and Marco both gave samples, their fates hanging in balance. The results would arrive in days. Meanwhile, Bella and Zane stayed in a quiet apartment, tension high. Bella feared what might happen if Zane really was the rightful heir. "Will they try to buy you? Change you?" she asked. Zane smiled, brushing her cheek. "They don't get to change me. I know who I am now." But inside, he feared losing her in the storm of wealth and inheritance. When the results came back, the truth was clear. Zane was not only Marco's half-brother, he was the firstborn son. The legitimate heir. The board was stunned. Marco stormed out. Zane had won, but the battle was far from over. The family's legal team called for a reevaluation of the inheritance structure. Marco was stripped of his majority control. Shares were frozen. The media went wild. Headlines screamed mechanic turns out to be billionaire heir. Cameras swarmed Zane wherever he went. But Zane wasn't interested in joining the elite. He declined every offer, refused to sit on the board. "I just want what's mine," he said. "And I want Marco to answer for what he did." Bella stood by him through it all, her love unwavering despite the chaos. Marco, meanwhile, plodded in silence. He knew Zane was now a threat not just to his ego, but to everything he had. And Marco was never the type to lose quietly. Marco couldn't sleep. His name was being dragged, his image shredded, and the board he once controlled now looked to Zane. But Marco had one last card to play: blackmail. He hired a hacker to dig into Bella's past, desperate to find anything to use against her. What they found shocked even Marco. Bella had once used a false identity to escape an abusive ex-fiancé, a secret she had never told anyone, not even Zane. Marco saw his opportunity. He arranged a private meeting with Bella. When she showed up, he dropped the file in front of her with a wicked grin. "If you don't leave Zane and disappear forever, I'll release this to every media outlet and destroy both of you," he sneered. Bella's hands trembled. She knew the world would twist her story, paint her as a liar. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. But Marco's silence said he already had. That night, Bella didn't return to the apartment. Zane waited until morning, pacing, calling, searching. Then he found a letter. It was written in her handwriting, shaking and tear-stained. "I have to go. Don't look for me. This is for your good." Zane tore through the streets, asking anyone and everyone. No one had seen her. It was as if she had vanished. Heartbroken and furious, Zane went to confront Marco. "Where is she?" he growled. Marco leaned back, smug. "Gone. Like she should have been from the start." But Marco didn't know Zane had already seen the folder Bella left behind. The blackmail. The threats. The truth. And now, Zane was no longer holding back. "You want war?" he said. "You just got one." Zane made contact with someone from Marco's past, an old associate who had been burned and betrayed by him. This man had been waiting for a reason to bring Marco down. With his help, Zane uncovered financial crimes, illegal land deals, and forged signatures tied to Marco. With this evidence, Zane launched a full-scale legal assault. He hired the best investigators, lawyers, and private security. Marco's empire began to shake. Investors pulled out. News stories broke daily. The media began to question everything about Marco. But none of it mattered to Zane if he couldn't find Bella. He hired a search team of his own. "She's scared," he told them. "But she's not alone. I'll find her. No matter how long it takes." Bella had taken refuge in a coastal village, working at a small restaurant under a new name. She watched the news every day, tears rolling down her cheeks whenever Zane appeared. She missed him terribly, but she believed she had no choice. She thought her presence would ruin his future. One evening, while walking by the shore, she spotted a man from her past. It was Marco's spy. He hadn't followed her yet, just watching from a distance. That meant Marco still wanted her silence. She felt trapped all over again. But then, a familiar car pulled into the village. A tall figure stepped out, scanning the street. Bella froze. Zane. He found her. When their eyes met, she ran straight into his arms, crying. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I just wanted to protect you." Zane held her tighter. "I don't need protection. I need you." With Bella back, Zane moved with precision. The legal case against Marco exploded. Bella bravely testified, exposing Marco's blackmail and manipulation. She stood tall before the cameras and the courtroom. The world now saw her not as a runaway, but as a woman who had survived it all. Marco was arrested on multiple charges. Fraud. Blackmail. Attempted arson. His face, once plastered on billboards, now filled the evening news in disgrace. His board removed him permanently. His inheritance was stripped. Zane didn't take over the empire. Instead, he auctioned off all the assets that once belonged to Marco and donated everything to rebuild small workshops and garages for struggling mechanics, just like he once was. Bella smiled. "You didn't just win, you became everything he could never be." Zane planned it quietly. No press, no fanfare, just the two of them under the stars on the same road where they first met. He walked her to the hood of a rusty old car, a candle-lit dinner set up on the bonnet, and her favorite food waiting. Bella laughed. "You brought me back to where you yelled at me about car oil?" Zane grinned. "I thought it was romantic." Then he dropped to one knee. "From the day you stepped into my life, everything changed. Not because of money or bloodlines, but because you saw me when no one else did. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They kissed under the stars, surrounded by engine grease and wildflowers. It was nothing fancy, but it was real. It was them. They kept the wedding simple, friends from the garage, villagers from their escape, and Zane's birth mother walking him down the aisle. No designer gowns, no lavish decorations. Just love, laughter, and the sound of wrenches clinking in the background. Bella wore a simple white dress, and Zane wore a suit he stitched together himself. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to love you even when you mess up the engine," Bella joked. "And I promise to love you even when you drive with the handbrake on," Zane replied. They sealed it with a kiss, and the guests cheered wildly. Two souls from different worlds, now perfectly intertwined, not because of fate, but because they fought for it with everything they had. Zane reopened his old garage, but this time, it wasn't just his. It was theirs. Bella helped design the space, turning it into a modern, cozy workshop where people from all walks of life could come, not just for repairs, but for hope. They hired young people who were unemployed, taught them skills, gave them purpose. Zane's name became known not for being a lost heir, but for being a man who turned his pain into purpose. People started calling him the people's mechanic. Bella stood beside him through it all, proud. She even learned how to change oil without spilling it everywhere. "We're not rich," she said, "but we've got everything we need." And Zane agreed, happiness wasn't something you bought. It was something you built. Years passed peacefully, until one morning, Bella received a letter. It was from her old ex-fiancé. The abusive one. He was being released from prison and claimed he had unfinished business. Fear returned to her eyes. Zane didn't hesitate. He contacted his legal team, increased their security, and made sure Bella was never alone. But what surprised them both was how Bella faced it. She refused to run this time. "I've run enough," she said. "I'm not afraid anymore." The man never showed up. He disappeared days after his release. Rumors swirled that someone made sure he stayed far, far away. Zane never confirmed it, but a former contact of Margot's had been seen in town, talking to someone quietly. Perhaps not all ghosts stayed enemies forever. One afternoon, a young woman's car broke down outside Zane's garage. Frustrated and out of breath, she kicked the tire and groaned. Zane wiped his hands and walked over with a smile. "Having car trouble?" he asked. The girl turned, startled. "Yeah, it just died on me. I don't even know what went wrong." Zane chuckled. "Sounds familiar." Bella came out, recognizing the scene instantly. They exchanged a knowing glance, and Zane rolled up his sleeves. As he fixed the car, he told the girl, "Sometimes, the worst breakdown leads you to the best parts of life." The girl smiled. "You should write a book." Bella laughed. He already did. In Oil Stains and Love Stories. Years later, their garage had become a symbol of hope. People traveled from far to see the legendary mechanic who once lived in the shadows of betrayal and rose through love, grit, and grease. Zane and Bella had 2 kids now, both already playing with toy tools. One evening, as they watched the sunset behind the garage, Bella leaned her head on Zane's shoulder. "Did you ever imagine this life?" He shook his head. "I never imagined someone like you would break down in front of my shop." They laughed. The same way they always did. Because life hadn't been easy. But it had been theirs. And sometimes, all it takes is one broken car to drive you straight into destiny.